inside us, hidden.
Right.
We're not really supposed to search between good and evil. We're supposed to search for Him. But how do we discern? There is still discernment somewhere at some level to decide, is that Jesus talking or is that the spirit of death? You know?
Yes, right.
Like, it's not the knowledge of good and evil per se, like that tree.
It's life and death, though.
It's like, which spirit am I hearing telling me this? You know, it's easy to confuse. Like Peter would confuse those spirits. Like, is that revelation from God or from Satan? You know? It's easy.
He flipped over pretty quick.
Oh, yeah.
That verse is actually in chapter 16.
Okay.
He'll convict the world of sin, righteousness, and judgment. It's John 16, verse 8.
Thank you.
Okay.
And so you can have two people that are spirit-filled, and they can be confronted with an incident and get revelation and have opposite opinions. Like, that's a little tricky, you know.
Yeah, it's true.
Well, did that happen to Paul?
And Barnabas.
Yeah.
Did.
Yeah.
And it was so intense that they split up.
Mm-hmm.
And they both went different ways. So who was right? Who was wrong? See, it wasn't an issue of who was right and who was wrong. Really.
Yeah. Isn't there something in the Bible where he left somebody sick?
Yeah, he left Timothy someplace, I think. Didn't he? Or Philemon, was it?
Yeah. So weren't they raising the dead, healing the sick?
It's true. It's a good question. Because, Timothy, he told Timothy at one point to take a little wine for his stomach's sake. So obviously Timothy had some kind of a problem with his tummy.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's given him a remedy. So, yeah. But it's hard to know how to interpret that. But they were, in fact, raising the dead and healing people. But again, it wasn't necessarily them doing it. Mm-hmm. You know, the Holy Spirit was doing it through them. So I suppose it says of Jesus that everybody that came to him, he healed them all. It doesn't say he healed the majority. It doesn't say that they got 90% healing rate. It says he healed all, everyone. But it also says that there was a couple of places that Jesus went, he couldn't do anything. Chorazin was one of them. He couldn't do one thing in Chorazin because of their unbelief. So I reckon there was probably a few sick people there. Didn't get healed, I don't know. So there is the context in which if there's no faith, like Jesus brought this up, your faith has made you well. If there is a resistance to the Spirit of God moving, the Holy Spirit is not going to overrule that, not going to override it. And say, well, like it or not, you're getting raised from the dead. You know, if there is a spirit of unbelief in a place, it's even the Son of God couldn't do something. It's just, he could not do anything there. And he was desirous of doing it. So, with Paul and with those people that didn't get healed, I don't know. Maybe they were resisting. I don't know. I don't know that Paul would say, no, you're not ready. He might. I've heard people do this. What's his name used to do this? Smith Wigglesworth used to do this all the time. People would come up to the altar and he'd say, nope, you're not ready. Come back another day. So, I don't know where he got that from, but I guess the Holy Spirit was telling him.
What do you have in store for us?
Well, I was just going to read you a section of chapter 2 here.
Okay.
Just to review it. We've pretty much gone through chapter 2. But this first paragraph is worth commenting on. It says, many have failed to recognize the essential distinction between rational thought and core consciousness. The reason for this is simple, although not always apparent. The majority of us have equated our thinking with consciousness. We have confused thinking with knowing. The truth is, most of us have never considered the possibility of consciousness beyond and without thought. We accept Descartes' axiom, I think, therefore I am, without ever questioning the validity. Without hesitation, we conclude that rational thought is the basis of our consciousness, never having been awakened to the distinction between soul and spirit. We are not aware that it is possible to divide between soul and spirit, and thus we have never learned to distinguish between thinking and knowing. Now, what I mean by that is, pretty much we believe that our thinking is our consciousness. And if we stopped thinking, we would be unconscious. So we equate consciousness and thinking. And it has never occurred to us, probably no reason to, that we could actually be conscious without thinking. Like most people would say, no, you're joking. But, as I go on in the book, in that chapter to explain, we can actually evaluate our thinking. We can actually judge it. And the Bible tells us not to lean on our own thinking. It tells us, do not walk as the Gentiles walk, in the vanity of their own thinking. That's the way non-believers walk. They walk in their mind, totally dictated to by their thinking. So as long as we think our thinking is who we are, there is no way we're going to get past believing our thoughts. And if there are thoughts in our mind that say certain things, we will believe them without question. We will not be able to say, well, that's crazy, I don't believe that. Because if they're established in our thinking, we are going to believe them. Like people who struggle with self-image. Where do these thoughts come from? Well, I mean, you look at them and they're competent, they're intelligent, they're put together, they're good looking, or whatever. You think they got everything going for them, but they have no self-image. They actually believe that what the thoughts in their head are telling them are true. They can't do anything right, nothing's good, everything's bad. And you think, why would they do that? Because from the outside looking on, you think, there's no basis to that. But they're convinced. I mean, people with eating disorders, what happens? Why do they look in the mirror and say, oh, I'm so fat? And yet, they're skinny as a rail. They've been purging for years and they're on the verge of dying and they still actually think they're fat. Well, what's going on there? It's because they are so tied to their mind that they can't see past it. And their mind dictates 100% what they believe. And because those thoughts are in their mind, that's the end of it. You can't convince them otherwise. Now that's an extreme case. But there are varying degrees of that very same principle all the way down the line. We actually believe things that are in our mind that have no basis in reality. None. But we're convinced they're true.
It's a deception.
It is a deception.
It's usually caused by a childhood wound, and
Yes.
the false belief comes in, and the enemy runs with it.
Yes, but how does he get away with it? This is the thing you've got to ask. Like,
How does he have access?
how could he convince a normal, intelligent human being of such a blatant lie?
Well, I guess when you're a child, you can be very impressionable,
Right.
and if you're bullied or if you are mistreated by your family or you're an outcast of sorts, then there is that deep wound that says, I'm not valuable.
Right.
I don't mean it.
Right.
I'm just not good enough. I never will be. So then they grow up, and it doesn't matter how much success they have, but they still believe it.
It's true. It's true, and there's evidence of it every day. We meet people, maybe who have similar, to varying degrees, problem getting past the lie that's in their mind. But the point is that somewhere the thoughts in their mind have become a god to them, have become the absolute, and they can't get around it. They can no longer see it for what it is. They see it for something it isn't, and they believe it's something else. So there's some way we have to get past our mind. Like worry, for example. I grew up with a family that worried. I had different people in my extended family who were worriers. And you sort of just catch this. It's like a virus, it goes around. And by the time I became an adult, I worried about a lot of things. Now, in my thinking, they had validity, why I was worried about them. I had reasons to believe that I was worrying justly and for good cause. Why would you worry otherwise? But it wasn't until the Holy Spirit actually showed me that I was wrong that I really understood I had a problem, because I couldn't quit. It was an addiction. I could not stop. You think, well, that's really dumb. Just stop. But you can't. Because somewhere you actually believed something that's causing you to worry, and you can't see it anymore. You can't walk up to it and say, you know what? That's a lie. You can't see it now. And so you just ruled by this belief. Well, somewhere, how does God save us from our mind? How does God save us from those kind of things? Surely if salvation doesn't deal with that kind of issue, what is it? What good is it? Being saved means being saved from things that destroy us, and worry kills us. Fear is a monster. And yet, many Christians live with fear. And isn't that what being saved means? Really?
Set free from?
Yeah, being set free from fear. Being saved from fear. Being saved from those things that